O all ye who pass by, whose eyes and mind to worldly things are sharp, but to me blind. To me whose eyes that I might you find, was ever a grief like mine. The princes of my people make a head against their Maker, they do wish me dead. Who cannot wish except I give them bread, was ever a grief like mine. Without me each one who doeth now be brave, had to this day been an Egyptian slave. They used that power against me which I gave, was ever a grief like mine. Mine own apostle, who the bag did bear, though he had all I had, did not forbear to sell me also to those who put me there, was ever grief like mine. For 30 pence he did my death devise, who at 300 did the ointment price, not half so sweet as my sweet sacrifice, was ever grief like mine.
John chapter 18, verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden, in which he entered with his disciples.
Therefore my soul melts, and my heart's dear treasure, drops of blood, the only beads my words to measure. Oh, let this cup pass, if it be thy pleasure, was ever a grief like mine. These drops being tempered with a sinner's tears, a balsam or for both hemispheres, curing all wounds but mine, all but my fears, was ever grief like mine. Yet my disciples sleep, I cannot gain 1 hour of watching, but their drowsy brain comforts me not, and doeth my doctrine stain, was ever a grief like mine. Arise, arise, they come, look how they run, alas, what haste they make to be undone. How with their lanterns do they seek the sun, was ever grief like mine.
John chapter 18, verses 2 through 11. Now Judas also, who was betraying him, knew the place, for Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Judas then, having received the Roman cohort and officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. So Jesus, knowing all the things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, Whom do you seek? They answered him, Jesus the Nazarene. He said to them, I am he. And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with them. So when he said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Therefore he again asked them, Whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus the Nazarene. Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these go their way, to fulfill the word which he spoke. Of those whom you have given me, I lost not one. Simon Peter then, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his right ear. And the slave's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, Put the sword into the sheath. The cup which the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?
With clubs and staves they seek me, as a thief, who am the way of truth, the true relief, most true to those who are my greatest grief, was ever grief like mine. Judas, dost thou betray me with a kiss? Canst thou find hell on my lips, and miss of life, just at the gates of life and bliss, was ever grief like mine. See, they lay hold of me, not with the hands of faith but fury, yet at their commands I suffer binding, who have loosed their bands, was ever grief like mine. All my disciples fly, fear puts a bar, betwixt my friends and me they leave the star, that brought the wise men of the east from far, was ever grief like mine.
John chapter 18, verses 12 through 24. So the Roman cohort and the commander and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him and led him to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it was expedient for one man to die on behalf of the people. Simon Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. Now that disciple was known to the high priest, and entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door outside. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper, and brought Peter in. Then the slave girl who kept the door said to Peter, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the slave and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter was also with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I also taught in synagogues and in temples, where all the Jews come together. And I spoke nothing in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I have spoken to them. They know what I said." When he said this, one of the officers standing nearby struck Jesus, saying, "Is that the way you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me?" So Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest.
Then from one ruler to another bound, they lead me, urging that it was not sound. What I taught, comments where the text confound, was ever grief like mine. The priest and rulers all false witness seek 'gainst him who seeks not life, but is the meek. And ready paschal lamb of this great week was ever grief like mine.